Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today we are decoding Trump tweets of September 28th, 29th. But I do want to drop back and do a few that we missed on the 26th, and also I want some more clarification.
It is an honor to be with you here today, Betsy, addressing Trump tweets on the Trump Tweet Network, which is more profound than all the others put together because of the truths that are told here on the Trump tweets.
Okay. Well, look, on September 26th, President Trump retweeted White House tweets that acknowledged that he had bilateral meetings. So these are separate meetings with Netanyahu, then with Minister Abe from Japan, and then finally Theresa May. We had talked a little bit about Prime Minister Abe and Netanyahu, but when you answered the Netanyahu tweet, or we were decoding it, folks started sending us a text. They really want you to zoom in on this. Mirjam from Switzerland was most adamant.
Well, that particular response that you showed me demonstrated how big the question of Israel is, and how, unless you stand back and look at history, you're not going to be able to comprehend what's happening there now. There's just too many forces. And now, with Trump coming into the mix, the great disruptor, the Middle East has never seen anything like what he has done. And yes, it's extremely confusing because you do not see Trump's outer strategies. Simply, you will not. You will not. And you will not understand his strategies unless you are absolutely comprehensive in seeing every move that he makes. For instance, people don't understand. They think that Trump is always for Israel. No, he is not. Recently, he ended most of the money flowing through the United States aid for development in other countries, most of which was going to, in the largest numbers, it was going to the very countries that Obama was bombing, either Afghanistan, Iraq, and then right after that, Israel, Jordan. And we literally are building a wall for Israel. We're building a wall for Jordan, but we won't build a wall in this country to protect us. We literally gave billions and billions of dollars last year, the year before, in a continuing deal, not last year because it's ending now, because Trump has also stopped a lot of the money flowing through OPIC. And we've pointed this out in many intelligence reports and many conversations that we've had. So what is really going on there has to be looked at from a higher altitude. It is called the Levant Basin, which is one of the largest liquid natural gas deposits in the world. And Israel has to keep up a war with Lebanon and Syria and anyone else who is claiming rights to this shared Levant Basin to get this NDL. And the lady who wrote in, Mirjam, is correct about that. So you're correct about many things that you said. The problem is that this information isn't out there unless you want to read it from our intelligence reports, because you won't find it unless you go to original documents. No one is actually reporting this. So as we feed millions of dollars to Israel every year, not only in overt U.S. aid, but in OPEC and in many, 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 many other ways, because we are investing and backing up investments for oil in the Golan Heights. That's the reason that the Golan Heights border between the Golan Heights and Syria, of course, Israel stole that from Syria, and they're keeping it. Even during this civil war, no one is contesting Israel because why? They have the best militarization in the area. And why is that? Because we give them, if I quoted the numbers to you, you wouldn't believe them. But let's just say we give them untold billions of dollars in many different ways to make sure that their military is top notch. Notice that they can get in and bomb and get out without any problem, but we can't even do that. The Russians can't do that. The Syrians can't. No one can do that. The Israelis are the most refined, perfected laser-type instruments, weaponized strikes that you can imagine. And there's right now many banks of missiles sitting in Syria waiting to be blown up. And we just got through seeing Netanyahu. He went to Washington to make sure to say that he was going to release this information of now new pictures that he has of a plant that is doing the uranium enrichment at a very high level and creating fissile material that they shouldn't be creating, what he calls a nuclear program, which they've always continued. Hello? Everybody knows that, Bibi Netanyahu. Everybody knows that. And you're not going to trick President Trump into bombing that facility for you. It's in Tehran. Why is it, Bibi, that you can't get it through your head? We told you this before, in case you're listening. You're not going to get Trump to bomb Iran, or especially Tehran, which is what you want. You want him to bomb Tehran. That's the reason that you made up the fake presentation last time with all the CDs on the stand showing that their nuclear program was in a storage facility in Tehran. Really, you wanted to bomb. But that was a lie, as you full well know. That was an old program that was in a storage unit. And your presentation was terrible. And so you don't seem to have what Betsy and her team have developed, which is talking memes. You need to get talkies, you need to get memes that have music and words, but they also still have a message that you want to get across. Your message is not good. Your message is, hello world, we're Israel, we're going to bomb Iran. And we just found this plant, and we have pictures, so we get to bomb them. No, incorrect. Now, if they were really doing nuclear activity there, they would have bombed them a long time ago. You can trust that. Because the Likud party, from the beginning, was the British hammer that went into the Levant. And by the Levant, I'm referring to, that would be Jordan, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, good parts of Turkey, Asia Minor, what they used to call Asia Minor, plus Iraq and Iran, and of course Israel and Egypt and so on and so forth. That entire Middle East area. And if we move to the west of that, you get in the Mediterranean, at the bottom of it, Israel has just put 4 giant drilling offshore facilities to pull up this liquid natural gas, to make sure that the other people in the Levant don't get to it. They destabilize their nations through war continuously. It is coming up faster than it's ever come up before in history. And they had, last I checked, 3 that were active and 2 that were ready to go. And they were trying to contest Egypt for claiming their part of it. They were trying to contest Cyprus for their part of it. So Israel is in an oil war. People don't understand this. People don't understand that Israel is becoming an oil-rich nation. Not only did they have the Jordanian pipeline that had come to them, which, as far as I can tell, still does, though they hide that. Not only were they buying the Syrian oil pipeline coming out of Iraq, the oil that was finally at the end reaching that, which we know was going into boats and going to Israel, and other parts were going in. Of course, we saw the pictures that Putin provided himself, the intelligence pictures of all this oil going to Israel, out of Syria, and all the rest of it going in trucks back to Syria to a relative of Erdogan through a corrupt, fraudulent deal, trying to hide the fact that that oil is flowing there. So you got to get your facts straight. And the facts are very, very hard to get in this picture. But if you stand back far enough, you will understand that during the time that they were doing the Treaty of Versailles, British and French agents were working with U.S. agents in closed-door meetings to create what was called the Sykes-Picot PICOT agreement, which divided up the Levant, divided up the Middle East, in those areas I just mentioned, including Saudi Arabia, into British, French hands with U.S. approval under the guise of giving the diaspora of the Jews, the spreading out of the Jews after the Holocaust, give them a home to come to. They made it sound like it was a home for them to come to, so the British gave up of their land. No, they didn't. The British and the French used America as their weapon to support the Israeli Zionism that was behind the Sykes-Picot agreement, which was to control the oil in the Middle East, no matter what, by creating a clash of nations and by pitting the already existing factions of Islam, Shiites and Sunnis, against each other. And then the Brits and the French took over Iran, while the Americans took over, through Rockefeller and Standard Oil, the oil in Iraq. And then the British and French fought, as well as the Iranians and the Iraqis, over the oil in Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria. And you can see that the oil fight still goes on. So the lady who asked the question, Mirjam, is absolutely right about the question.
Well, you see, I kind of assumed that people had a level of understanding of this that maybe I shouldn't have assumed. And let's just take it way back. The reason that you might be confused about Zionism and about Netanyahu is because you don't understand how a group can come in and use another group to hide itself in. It's sort of like when the Roman Empire, it didn't really collapse. What it did is it infiltrated itself early on in early Christianity. And then you see it unfold in history to where it is today, a bunch of pedophile priests and pope running around the Vatican, it wasn't what Christianity was to be. So the Zionists hide themselves as well. And one group that they hide themselves inside is the Jewish people and the Jewish faith. So that an average person says, oh, I can't criticize something that this person does because then I'll be called a Zionist, right? Well, that they've done a good job. They've hidden themselves behind the skirts of the Jewish people. Then you also get a lot of folks, even in the alt media, they absolutely go bonkers when they see that President Trump is meeting with Netanyahu because they know Netanyahu is a Zionist. So then they say Trump is a Zionist. Are you people fools? Don't you understand the art of war? You don't come out wearing pennies in different colors announcing who you are. I'm sorry.
No, that was beautiful. And I agree with every word of it. And it points at the key factor. These nested dolls, like Russian nested dolls, inside of Israel is a group called Likud, which has always been basically the hammer, the war hawks, the bloodthirsty Zionists who wanted expansionism at all costs for what? Oil. Now let's give a perfect example then. Okay, so Likud is within Israel. Israel is within Zionism. Zionism is within the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which is between France, Britain, and the USA. And who wants to get in? Oh, Russia wants to get in. China wants to get in. They all want to get in on this oil deal because why? The British and the French controlled the Iranian oil, and they still want to control it, but now the Russians and the Chinese have gotten into Iran by selling them particularly missiles, the defense missiles, but in some case strike missiles, which are all prepared and ready in Syria. They're going to be bombed any day by Netanyahu. I'm sure that their conversation was to give him a go-ahead, and Trump said no. And that's the reason he didn't bomb after that meeting. He came to get permission because he had already secretly bombed some of these missiles to show, and then he sent out, Netanyahu, sent out pictures, intelligence pictures, of these missiles in Syria, warning them that they are going to be blown up because they have been already, 30 of them shot at Israel, and then recently hundreds of small bombs thrown across the border. But let's look at the other nested doll. The other nested doll is the Golan Heights. Why do they want the Golan Heights? Not only for Zionist expansionism, which will take every inch that they can of the entire area, all those countries I mentioned, including all of Turkey, and anything else they can, because behind it are corporations. And so they can get away with murder, literally, by hiding behind corporations, and their weapon on the ground that they use is the rogue CIA and rogue intelligence agencies from all these different countries. So, what was really going on? You have Trump out-Trumping all of them. He's not playing the game of peace in Israel, is he? He's saying two-nation agreement, unless you can come to an agreement before you come to the table that is different than that.
No, he didn't. It wasn't that elaborate. He just says it's a two-nation solution or a one-nation solution.
But we already stopped funding the Palestinians because they are terrorists. And right now, look at the hundreds of bombs and the recent attacks on the borders. Now, admittedly, those borders are incorrect, and they're from expansionist Zionism. But inside of the Golan Heights, what is really going on? Why was it taken? It was taken for oil. Now, let's look how nested it gets. Who owns those oil companies? Oh, that would be Dick Cheney. I forget which of the Rockefellers. One of the Rockefellers. But they're the same criminals that you always see. This is an insider group who used U.S. aid with loans backed by OPIC, to buy land that they had already tested from Halliburton that they knew all this oil was in.
But wait a minute.
Then they had a war to take that land.
Then there must be also the nesting of the British Empire in here.
Oh, yes,
and the
Rockefellers.
Rothschilds and the
I'm sorry, the Rothschilds.
Right.
I'm sorry. One of them was a Rockefeller relative, but the other one is a Rothschild.
Exactly.
And
so what you have here ultimately is a group of globalists that people can easily say the Jews.
They're Zionists.
They're Zionists.
And it's
They're
British.
But they keep you from looking and examining this because they've infiltrated all of our communities with Holocaust museums, which are pieces of propaganda to keep you from ever asking the deep questions about what's really going on over there.
And because I haven't refreshed my memory on this, I can't spew out all the details, but the company that owns this oil company, Cheney, the money behind it is actually British. And so what you see here is nested dolls. You see Israelis being blamed for being Zionists who take Golan Heights for the sake of globalists who are directed by the British, and particularly, undoubtedly, it will go back to, if we look closely, the Queen's Privy Council and their 499 members who basically control most of the economy of the world through these kind of nested corporate cabals. And so let's go further with this, though. How about the oil? So the oil in the Golan Heights the money's not even going to be given to the Israeli people. It's not even going to be given to the Syrians who it belongs to. It's not going to be given to the Americans who paid for the war weapons that it took to win it. It's not going to be given to the Americans who backed American taxpayers through a private corporation, OPEC, who backed the loans to do the drilling. So they got the drilling and the studies for free. It's not going to pay back the Americans who used the Secretary of State's discretion, U.S. aid, to give to Israel the money it took to build the facility to drill. And it isn't going to take back the money that U.S. taxpayers paid to defend Israel by the billions, literally hundreds of billions of dollars that go to Israel each year. If you look at the fact that they also create our Intel chips with the mechanical engines on the back, so they have complete control of everything. So we must trust Israelis so much that we allow them to, the only country in the world allowed to make Intel microchips with the mechanical engine on back, which is the control device for it, that is remote control, aggressive control, the patents we've talked about. That's all Israeli, and it's through a group called Talpiot we're going to be revealing soon. So Likud is inside of the Israelis, inside of the Zionists, inside of the globalists, inside of the corporations that are doing oil deals, both in the Levant Basin with the liquid natural gas, as they keep everyone at war so they can't drill, as well as in the Golan Heights and in Jordan.
So when Trump was in this bilateral meeting with Netanyahu, what do you imagine might have been spoken?
He wanted to see if Trump is going to bust him for the kickbacks on the Golan Heights deal, the Cheney Oil. I believe it's called Norton Oil also. But the Cheney Oil Company, you can look it up. It's very simple. Just plug in Dick Cheney, who's always at the forefront of wherever the corruption is. And so Trump didn't say to him, Bibi, I'm not going to hold you responsible for the criminal oil deals that your wife has done with these globalists who are using Israel to basically continue the war. Why? Because Trump doesn't really care about that war. But now here's something that people don't know, that Trump does know. And this is kind of shocking, because every time I say it, people pull their hair out. We gave limited nuclear warfare to the Israelis a long time ago. They actually are producing their own missiles. So they can defend themselves quite adequately, and the defense systems that they have are also, of course, they were built together with us. You cannot say Israeli intelligence without putting /CIA. You cannot say Unit 8200 without saying John Brennan /counterintelligence. You cannot say the word Talpiot without saying global tech warlords. And that's what they are, because they have 1 million people in their intelligence department, but almost none of them live in Israel. They're throughout the world infiltrating. And the stingrays in D.C., those belong to Israel. But that's beyond Israel. Once you get into Talpiot, you get into a corporate intelligence system. And that's why we, Betsy, have created a counterintelligence system, a counter-propaganda system. And what I call your talking memes, the memes with the videos and the music and the sound that are come across with a profound message.
We're encouraging everyone to come out there. We've got to get our information arsenal built up because there are a lot of folks that they're low information. They don't have a great attention spans, and you want to send out these little bits of piece of information that are fun and entertaining.
It's like being in a Zen temple getting whacked on the head with a bamboo stick to wake you up.
Yes.
Sorry, you have to wake up, and it's not very comfortable. Who wants to get up and wake up and get out of bed?
Well, let me talking about waking up. What do you think the wake-up call was for Theresa May when she met with Trump during this bilateral meeting?
Well, Theresa May was on her feet licking his boots saying, please, please save me from George Soros, whose 10,000 people on the street have convinced the Brits to have another election for Brexit. So all of her plans are down the tube, and Boris Johnson will take her place.
I would think that one of the other things they would have talked about were these recent FISA warrants and redactions that eventually show us that Stephen Halper was connected to the Privy Council.
Well, that's when she moved around from the front of his shoes to behind him, because then she had to kiss him, because she was 100% complicit. And what I would like to call British Spygate goes right back to her lap.
Well, that's what I would thought, that she was saying, please don't release these redactions.
This was big news in the headlines the entire time, that George Papadopoulos was being framed by Stephen Halper, who we paid $1 million at that time to frame him and frame Sam Clovis and frame Carter Page and work with Boris Johnson. Remember, Boris Johnson recognized George Papadopoulos as being one of Trump's advisors, which he never was. He was on a list, and he came to 2 meetings. He never spoke to Trump, and yet they in England went to so much trouble to roll out the red carpet for him because they were framing him to be the person who they were going to give, but he didn't want them. George Papadopoulos wouldn't take them. The 33,000 supposed missing emails of Hillary, which Hillary said were gone. That was a setup. That's because she gave them, of course, to the FBI, which we know for a fact because Christopher Wray testified before Congress that he has all 33,000 missing Hillary emails. They were going to give them and plant them on George Papadopoulos as if they had come through the Russians, through Joseph Mifsud, and through this Roman group of CIA agents, Michael Gaeta and the rest of them, who used Joseph Mifsud as his supposed Russian spy, who was actually a British spy. It was such a bad job because George Papadopoulos was such low-hanging fruit. He is junior high school when it gets to intelligence. And by the way, anyone who read the Russian dossier, who thought it was intelligence, just as we've now heard from multiple congressmen who have said no one could believe after the first paragraph that it was intelligence. No one in their right mind, let alone the 13 installments that were paid for by the FBI, it looks as if it was about $50,000 per page for Christopher Steele to take the lies that were created by Comey and by Cody Shearer and by Sidney Blumenthal and by Christopher Steele and by Glenn Simpson. They all worked so hard to create that Russian dossier of lies. Alexandra Chalupa worked so hard. She put her whole self on the line. You know how hard they had to work to get Natalia Veselnitskaya to come into the country.
Well,
you know how hard they had to work to catch Guccifer 1.0 to set him up as the Romanian that was then they call a true Russian, and so Guccifer 2.0 could be called a Russian.
You know, that's probably why they started all this stuff with the Kavanaugh hearings, all this drama, to get us off of what you just described and stop thinking about it. Because, you know, I had forgotten all of that until you brought it up again. Which leads to the following tweets. Just started tonight our 7th FBI investigation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. He will someday be recognized as a truly great justice of the United States Supreme Court.
Notice how he keeps saying that. But does that sound like Trump is convinced? Does it sound like Trump is convincing us? Does that even sound like Trump? Let me read between the lines. He's making a joke. The 7th FBI investigation, he's saying, oh, look, I didn't know the fresh meat that I was throwing to these fools was going to expose them so bad. I really don't care. I hope they just keep fighting until these vicious, trained pit bulls start chewing on each other instead of the raw meat, which is what is really going on. This is a midterm, folks. This is an October surprise. Trump didn't have to do it this way. He did it this way on purpose. Brett Kavanaugh, well, will he get elected? Will he get confirmed? That is a flip of a coin.
Well, no, earlier audios you said he would not make it. So you're feeling now maybe, yes?
I actually hope he does make it now. You know why? He'll be totally 100% against the Democrats and totally for the conservatism that some believe he has and others believe he doesn't have. So at this point, after what he goes through, if he does get confirmed, he will be a Trumpite, he will be MAGA, he will be the first to get on board of Keep America Great, and you can guarantee what his vote is going to be for the rest of the time he's there, because that's the way it works, folks. Once they get elected, they vote that way forever. They were elected because of their partisan bias, period. Brett Kavanaugh didn't have partisan bias, period. He's the only one of the 144 that was on the list that didn't. He's the only one who was true SES with his wife, that Trump knew that if he threw out, both sides would go nuts and it would make the midterm be beautiful because they'd all show their rears and shoot themselves in their own foot.
The next tweet reads, Senator Richard Blumenthal must talk about his fraudulent service in Vietnam, where for 12 years he told the people of Connecticut as their attorney general that he was a great Marine War hero, talked about his many battles of near death, but was never in Vietnam. Totally phony. And of course, that's related to the Kavanaugh hearings because Blumenthal was one of the senators questioning. I just couldn't believe that he was asking the kind of questions he did, or any of them, to Kavanaugh when we already know that their backgrounds are so hideous, such as Dianne Feinstein with a Chinese spy with her since the beginning of her career. I mean, really.
Sits on the Judiciary Committee and no one's looking into her espionage connections, or Imran Awan's, or Debbie Wasserman Schultz, or the DNC's. But what I liked was this guy, Blumenthal's face says it all. Is that the face of an honest person? Would you buy a car from that man? No. And the only face that I kind of missed his face because it's so ugly and it had turned into a Frankenstein face in the end and it was kind of scary. But you could predict exactly when he'd start foaming at the mouth, and if he was around, he'd be foaming. As a matter of fact, we think he's probably not dead, and he is still foaming, and it's killing him.
Listen,
that he doesn't get the whole world to listen to John McCain's evil rants.
I'm going to say it again. That was a closed casket ceremony from start to finish. That means there was no John McCain body in that casket.
Did you get to see Leslie Graham, his boyfriend's attempt to be John McCain?
Oh my God.
It was the greatest moment of Lindsey Graham's entire career, which he said it was. And he also said that what he witnessed was the greatest, what did he call it? Not scam, not con, but that's what it is. But it was the worst thing that he'd ever seen in his entire time as a politician. So he used the superfluous attack of John McCain, who always gives his military encyclicals, and therefore it's true, and the topic is closed. Oh, Mitt Romney came out and did that for him. Did you hear that? Mitt came out and said, oh, no, this has to go to the FBI. Thanks, Mitt. Thanks for showing what you would have voted if you were a senator. You would have been the one vote that would have held it all up just like a John McCain. You were going to step up in John McCain's job so well.
Mitt Romney isn't worried about a darn thing because the election machines are rigged. He and Tag, his son, run that thing, and he knows no matter what, in Utah, he will win the vote.
They just came out with a report yesterday. ES&S, the biggest digital voting machine operation in America, completely fixed, fraudulent, and so easy to hack that even the government now recognizes it. Now you watch and see if anybody goes to paper ballots or not, knowing what we have revealed with the help of Americans for Innovation and Michael McKibben and his researchers and all the good people at other groups that work with us, which I'm never allowed to say, but all these other groups that work with us, we just have to say, we revealed to you that every single software counter of every vote in America is Optech, created by the rogue CIA with the United Nations, Lord Malik Brown, working with the socialists in Venezuela through Jimmy Carter, when Jimmy Carter was getting all of his money from BCCI. By the way, have you noticed BCCI is now coming out and being revealed as completely corrupt? It's more corrupt than HBSC. And they're saying, oh, it's always been rogue CIA. Oh, it's always been where the intelligence agencies laundered their stolen money. Thank you, Jimmy Carter. You're the one who helped us get Optech in position here in America to control every single election.
Let me just throw out this wild question. How does all of that election rigging relate to what's going on in Israel and Netanyahu?
Well, see, Netanyahu is a big, fat criminal, and he wasn't going along with the globalist deal. So he's kind of short-sheeting. He's trying to cheat the Zionists. And so he's not only getting his piece of the pie through his wife, through oil deals with the oil we described earlier, all three of the different sections we described and others, but he's just taken his off the top, and he's just such a criminal, and he's so overt. And I expect any minute that when they catch him totally red-handed, him instead of his wife, he will drop the bomb on a place in Tehran that will be one of his imaginations of what he thinks he's discovered through his intelligence and reported to the world, which are lies. So, it's not a pretty picture. But will he get caught? Well, what happened during the election? We have Barack Obama coming out now, even now, who said yes, he admits that he meddled in the Israeli elections, that he did not want Netanyahu to be reelected, and so he spent, I think the amount was, don't quote me on this, something like $750,000, which wasn't a lot. They spend a lot more in elections all over the world. We meddle in every election that we don't like.
Okay, hold on. Why wouldn't Barack Obama want to see Netanyahu win again?
He's a total globalist. He was a total Hillary Clinton, Bush.
And Netanyahu is not a globalist. He's a Zionist. What are you saying, that there's a difference between being a globalist and a Zionist?
Absolutely.
Explain the nuances there.
Well, the globalists can either be corporatists or they can be ideologists. Like Henry Kissinger is a globalist, but he's also an ideologue. So he controls the Council on Foreign Relations. And as our reader who wrote in said, yes, the CFR, our foreign policy, has been controlled by a group of globalist corporatists since the time of Woodrow Wilson. Correct until now. Trump doesn't listen to a word those people say. Actually, he does. He calls them in, gets them real close, and says, Michael Cohen, tell me everything you know about globalism, man. I think it's a great thing. Oh, really? That's the way it works? Get the hell out of here, you globalists. And I like you, but you're a globalist. Get the hell out. But you're a globalist. Get the hell out. And then what does he do? He hires one of the biggest globalists in our country. I'm not going to say who because I don't want to taint people, because then they get all freaked out that Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is using the forces that be.
Because that's all he has to work with, folks.
That's it. And what is he doing? He's turning him the forces that will be, and they will be MAGA, and they will be America first. And so what he's doing is he's either turning these people or he kicks them out, like Rex Tillerson, who would not listen to Trump, who wanted to continue to be king of the globalist world, king of the corporate world. He's a corporatist, but he wasn't a globalist. There's a perfect example. Rex Tillerson, corporatist, king of the world. Exxon was bigger than most countries. He ran it. He ruled it. He ruled the world through Exxon. Was he a globalist? No. He was for Trump. He was for America. He already saw what monopolies like Standard Oil create. It creates him, Exxon, evil, pure evil. He was actually working against it for a while, and then he couldn't handle it. Same thing with the head of the National Economic Council, Cohen. He kicked him out. Why? He learned everything he had. And what did he do? He put his best buddy in charge of the U.S. Treasury so that he controlled the real purse strings. Everything has an economic connection that's real. And if it doesn't flow with money, don't be concerned. It's the flow of money you have to control, and that's what Trump is changing.
And that's the language that Trump understands so well. It's the flow of money.
He knows how to make a business work. America hasn't been run as a business since it was turned over to the robber barons during the Woodrow Wilson era and was given over to the inquiry that became the Council on Foreign Relations, and the League of Nations became the United Nations.
Now, on the final tweet, I would like you to make sure that in your answer, you used the words Dianne Feinstein, Richard C. Bloom, and Avid. Okay?
Well, then you know I'm going to foam at the mouth.
Okay. The tweet is, NBC News incorrectly reported, as usual, that I was limiting the FBI investigation of Judge Kavanaugh and witnesses only to certain people. Actually, I want them to interview whoever they deem appropriate at their discretion. Please correct your reporting.
And it won't, because Dianne Feinstein, Richard C. Bloom's wife, who is a Chinese espionage agent, one of the worst we've ever seen in American history, who is yet to be indicted, that would be Dianne. They control Avid, which is controlled by ISIS management, which controls the prompter that every single mainstream media idiot reads, which is almost all of them.
Oh, let's put it this way. If you're a reporter and you're listening to Betsy and Thomas, and the way that you report the news is because you're reading it from a screen, you're an idiot!
You're worse than an idiot. You're complicit with now what is a racketeering, because you know that the monopoly that you have is spreading lies, and you know it's a lie because you can see the reality. Unless you don't look at any reality and you're a mainstream media reader, you're not a journalist, then maybe you could just say you're an idiot and you could say you're a useful idiot and you didn't know. But otherwise, if you did any research at all, which is supposed to be your job as
reporter,
the fifth, as the fourth estate that is supposed to be helping the third estate, but you are actually the fifth column, what you're really doing is you're participating in a monopolistic racketeering cabal, which is completely illegal, and Trump just wrote an executive order that says he's going to take you down. So, when he says that they reported untruths, he's making a joke. Of course they reported untruths. The reality is, and this is where it should have friggin' ended, but even the chairman of the Judiciary Committee didn't have enough balls to stand up and say, the FBI has been shown what little evidence there is, and they refuse to investigate because there's no evidence. It was done twice. And that was actually, technically, the 7th and 8th investigations of Brett Kavanaugh.
Well,
this will be the 9th, technically, because they refused, after looking at the evidence presented, the letter, which was made public by a leak, which then she read exactly wholesale, which demonstrated that she participated in the leak. And so whoever made that leak was trying to smear Kavanaugh in the worst of ways. And basically, there is a law that stops that when you try to stop the due process of the Judiciary Committee for a Supreme. There's actually a law, believe it or not.
Well, we actually got involved in doing this kind of these audios and writings is because when we saw San Bernardino, that false flag, we could see it was a false flag inside a false flag. And as we looked at it, we really saw factions of the FBI versus factions of the CIA. But now we want everyone to pay attention, because what you're seeing with the Kavanaugh hearings and all this drama that's unfolding is you're actually seeing those same forces again, but you're going to watch it real time playing out. We're seeing the FBI versus the CIA here. They're going to be button heads. I wonder who's going to win.
Well, remember, as we like to point out, there's a major war between all the intelligence community agencies now because of what has happened. But before that, there was a big one between the rogue CIA and the CIA.
I don't know why you say the rogue. I mean, the CIA is bad. FBI can't find crime under its roof. Bad. I mean, have you seen, what have the results of the last 8 years been? Look at the corruption. It's worse than I've ever seen it. And it was under the watch of the current FBI and CIA. We just need to get rid of this.
They didn't even do a good job of covering their own trail.
All they do is they create false flags all over the world. And what we're seeing right here with this Brett Kavanaugh thing is another kind of false flag being run on us. But the FBI, what are they going to say? Is Hillary going to drop in and leave some intel in the FBI files? Because she holds the encryption keys at the FBI. Will she put some damaging information on Kavanaugh? Do they have damaging information on him? Because he and his wife were both, and maybe currently are, senior executive service. So is there blackmail information on him? How far are they going to go back on Kavanaugh? Are they going to go as far back as his relationship with his priest? I mean, what will they do to destroy this man? And that's the FBI. But then if we're all watching the FBI and we know how corrupt it is, what is the CIA doing? We also know their corruption. I'm just saying, that's what we're watching.
How could we ask the FBI to investigate anything at this point and expect them to do a good job? And you're right, Hillary did recently plant evidence just to show what Betsy's saying is correct. They got a log from the time of his high school when he logged in to go on a sailboat, I think in Cape Cod it was Newport, Rhode Island, as a matter of fact. And they had this sailing club, and they went back and they got the records, some kind of digital records of him being there, and then they made up that assault of him assaulting somebody on the sailboat because they had some type of digitized login of that time. So that's what Hillary did. Yes. Hillary went and found the best person that they had in the entire CIA, who's, by the way, she is a CIA wannabe. She helps initial entrances of examinations for CIA recruits. That's her job.
Not Hillary. You're talking about Blasey Ford.
Ford does this. Mm-hmm. And so Hillary went and found through her keys, which is everything in the FBI, found the most vulnerable person who that in fact she's using. She weaponized, but now she's using them, and so that person will be destroyed too. And she's using it to destroy Brett Kavanaugh because she needs that, because if they do not get they need a blue tsunami if they intend to try to take down Trump. And if they don't take down Trump, globalism is ended, period. Now, it has ended, but these are their last dying pangs of death of the globalist, and Hillary is the ultimate of all globalists. She actually, in her mind, really thought she was going to take over for the Queen. She thought the Queen was going to die, and she was going to move the Privy Council to America. And I'm not exaggerating. And she actually thought she was going to be able to take over even the United Kingdom. And there's ways that she had planned for that, and you can actually see it in the report called The Paradigm of Progress, because the intelligence community told Hillary how she could be Queen of the World, but she did not listen.